Good morning. How's everyone today? Good to be here? Okay, good. Yeah, you guys online, we're so glad you're part of this as well. Glad that you're here. I've got a question for you this morning that when I first say it, you're going to be like, that is so easy, so simple. But it actually is basically the whole concept from the song, from our message today, from what I think we get from God's Word. So with that being said, here's the question. What makes you happy? What makes you happy? And not just happy for a moment or happy, yeah, it was fun going to the amusement park or whatever that might be. What actually really makes you happy? What do you seek to find happiness? And here's the question I would ask. How many of you, and I won't make you stand up or say your answer, but how many of you be honest and say, Trent, I think I know what makes me happy. I think I've found it, and I think I'm living in it, and life is pretty awesome. Anyone in that? Okay. 4 or 5 happy people in the whole group. Good, right? The majority of you are like, ugh, right? So here's what I want you to think about. What makes you happy? And the reason I ask that question is the most people I talk to, and this sounds offensive, and I get it. If you're watching online, you're like, these church people are so weird, and they're always saying stuff, and they don't even have a clue. I get it. I completely get your argument. But here's where I would kind of push back with the argument. I don't think many of you know what really makes you happy. And here's how I prove that. Because you want to be happy, and you're trying to be happy, and you're doing a lot of things to keep getting more happy. And at the end of the day, if I would really push in and say, hey, how do you feel? Well, I'm not happy. So is it possible, maybe, just maybe, okay, give me a little leeway here. Is it possible for most of us here that maybe we really don't know what makes us happy? So we spend most of our time on earth just constantly seeking and seeking and seeking. Well, that's where kind of the song comes in today. Under the Bridge by Red Hot Chili Peppers. One of my favorite moments. This week we were at football practice, and I was talking to another coach, and I was inviting him for this Sunday to be here. And he was like, so what's it about? I was like, well, funny you ask. We're doing a series like summer playlist. And I said, my song this week is Under the Bridge by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And he instantly got like this weird face, and he said, dude, you know that song is about being under a bridge shooting up on heroin, right? I said, yes, exactly, right? And it's C3. None of you jokers care, right? And you don't. So you're just like, matter of fact, I walked by, I saw some of you during worship, you're like, whatever. But I stood in this front row during Under the Bridge, and I just heard bellowing behind me. Like people were actually like finally into it. But no, with that being said, the purpose of this song, and if you know the backstory of the band, 90s hit. I'm a 90s child, so of course I like, a lot of music in that era. But what's interesting is, and this is where the song really came from, the lead singer did struggle for years with a lot of different addictions, but heroin mainly was the big one. And the whole song came, he wrote a poem. And they didn't find out till years after the band had kind of been going, but he was saying one day, and he wrote the poem because here's what happened. He was in the middle of addiction, he was lonely, and he said, basically, this girl, his girlfriend, he said, the only person I ever felt in my life truly cared about me and loved me. One person was it. And he said, drugs pushed her away. Now I was horrible to her. She has nothing to do with me. He said, the band started getting annoyed by me, so we had a lot of friction. And he said, I remember thinking, I was walking down the streets of L.A. and literally had no friends, no family, no one who cared about me, and I could care less because I was just looking for my next fix. Got hooked up with a Mexican drug dealer, met him, had no money, literally, just basically borrowing money, trying to steal whatever. He said, I finally found a fix, and I went under a bridge in L.A. and shot up. And he said, in that moment of just shooting up with this drug dealer, I thought, this is as low as my life will ever be. So today I want you to think about, for some of you, you're like, dude, I feel at least better than that, right? You're not him, maybe. Maybe some of you are, right? You're like, maybe you're worse. I don't know. But I want you to really think of this question. Now, I'm going to give you just a thought. And if you're young in here, I'm going to save you years of laboring, years of just being stressed if you truly think about this. And I would argue all of you in this room believe it. We don't live it, but we believe that. And this is this. First thing I want you to understand, happiness is more about who than what. Okay? Your ultimate happiness will always be relational. It'll always involve a who. You know how I know this? When you were kids, right? When you were with your friends, if you think about this moment, all your friends, it didn't matter what you had as long as you had the who's, or a who or two, or a few who's, right? If the who's were right, the what didn't matter. And even as you get older, you know this as well as I do. You might have everything you possibly dreamed of. You've got a nice multiple cars, a 2-car garage. You've got a nice home. But you know as well as I do, if you and your spouse or you and your family have turmoil, your kids going through something, doesn't matter. No what can ever fix a who. So who's trump the what's. So happiness is always more about a what than a who. Think about that, because it's true. My best friend growing up was a kid by the name of Jeremiah Triplett. We lived probably half a mile apart. We'd ride bikes to each other's house. We were great friends together all the time. Matter of fact, his dad, which was partially a hit on us because he was saying we were so dumb, he said we shared the same brain, right? Because we both had about half a brain, but we were like on the same page. Best friends. When we were little, we collected He-Man figures. I never really got into much of anything, but I did love my He-Man action figures. So what we would do is Christmas, different times, we would get different pieces each. We'd get separate pieces, and we would get together. He had Castle Grayskull. I have Moss Man. Anyone remember the He-Man figures? Remember Moss Man was actually made of moss? No one cares. Okay, fair enough. But let me tell you, I was thinking back to that. And I remember one day I woke up, it was a Saturday morning, and my mom and dad's loud, and I walk in the front room, and there's Jeremiah in his pajamas. And I'm like, what's going on? And he was like, my house just burnt down. We lost everything. And because I am such a compassionate, caring person, I looked him in the eyes and said, I left my He-Man stuff at your house last night. And he said, I know, it's all gone. We're like, what gives? But I think about that the next week, we're hanging out, didn't matter. Even the most important what's to both of us didn't matter like the who. And it's the same for you. And here's the problem with being happy for what's to. Happy what always leads to happy what else? Or happy what more, right? And if you're young, please, I'm telling you, I know you're old, you're super old, you're a little bit chubby, you're super chubby, whatever you can put me down however you want. You're dumb, I would never trust you, you think you're funny, you're not. I mean, the list goes on and on. But if I could just plead with you at all, it would be, really take this to heart. Because even if you're young, you know this is true. My kids, a few years back, got their first ever iPhones for Christmas. And man, they were and they were like, and I felt kind of bad because I was like, they're literally 3 years behind the normal ones. They're getting like 6s, and like the X was out. And they're like, oh my gosh, finally iPhones, we're so happy. And they were happy for, parents, you know this, what? About a month. And then they get to school and they're like, but all my friends have X's and 11. Like, we always want more. It's how we work. So what I want to challenge you with is this. What makes you happy? This is really encouraging today. Ready? What makes you happy? I would say this. Nothing. Wait. I spelled that wrong. Here's what I would say. What makes you happy? No thing. No thing will ever make you happy. It will always be a who. It will. And I was thinking, my father-in-law, my wife who's here, her dad, he makes fun of us. And my family makes fun of us too. But they always make fun of us because we are like children. With everything we do, we are not mature adults, okay? So if you want to really take advice from people, it's not us. We're just like, we live in the moment and like we don't care. It is what it is. But he said a phrase once and he was kind of making fun of us being, I think, even childish just a few years back. But it was the greatest compliment to me. And here's what he said. We were at their house, and he was talking about, he said, you could upgrade your back porch, and you could put a bathroom there, and then you'd have that for your pool, and that would be nice for people. And I could tell as he kept going, he was getting so excited about it. And I was trying to fake excitement, like, yeah, and we can get wrenches and screws, and I don't know what's going on. I'm just listening to him. And he said, you really don't care about this, do you? I was like, not really. And he said this. He said, I really believe that you and Jonda could live in a refrigerator box and be the happiest two people in the world. And in a way, he was saying, you're so immature and you don't take care of stuff. And you might be in a refrigerator box in a couple years. But I'll give you credit. You both would be pretty happy about it. And as much as he was making fun of me, I took that as a compliment. I really did. Aaron and Tony here, we were talking one day, and they said something about someone went, I think it was $1 million for the COVID shot or something. And they're like, what would you do? And they're like, they start making fun of me. They're like, I guarantee you don't even know. And I was like, I haven't really thought about it. And they're like, okay, but $1 million, what's the first thing you would do? And I was kind of stumped. I'm like, I don't know. And they said, wait, hold on, time out. If we walked in and gave you $50,000 right now, what's the first thing you would buy? And they were just mesmerized because I'm like, I don't know. I don't even think about it. I was like, what? It means nothing to me. And that's not being holy or anything. I just don't care, right? And they're like, you're such a weirdo. Dude, like, you've got to, like, if we gave you $100, what would you buy on Amazon right now? I don't know, another, like, water cooler? I don't know. I can't think of stuff like that. But, at the end of the day, I'm kind of proud of that. Some of you might be like, well, it's not mature, it's not feasible, whatever. End of the day, I know what makes me happy. No thing. And here's what changed my life. And this, if you're my age or in your 30s or older, I'm telling you, this would be very beneficial. I was friends with a guy, kind of call him my mentor. He's about 20 years older than me. And he set out to read a book, at least one book, every week or at least every 2 weeks. And he did that for 20 years. So I'm talking to him once. I'm like, dude, you've read 1 trillion books. I was like, what's your favorite one? And he said this. He said, to him, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was in his top 5 of all time. So I was like, oh, I'm going to read that then. I mean, if you read that many books. I don't know if I would put it in the same place, but it's very good. But here's what was life-changing for me. And it used to be on page, I think, 101. I think the new book, it's different. Either way, Stephen Covey, the author of this book, he says this. He says, I want to give you an exercise that will change your life. And here's how it works. He said, I want you to picture you're getting dressed up. You're walking into a funeral. There's a ton of people there. And you walk up to the casket, and it's an open casket. I know it's kind of grim. You walk up and you look, and you realize you're there. You're at your own funeral. And he says, here's what I want to challenge you to do, though. 4 people are going to speak at your funeral. Your spouse, your children, one of your closest friends, somebody you worked with. He said, what would you want them to say at your funeral? And his whole point was, figure that out. That's really important. Figure that out and then live every day with those things. Think about what you want them to say. Now live it out. Think about the end first. I was like, that's pretty powerful. So I actually took a week, no lie, and just started thinking that through. And I struggled. And I'll tell you why I struggled, okay? And those of you who know me pretty well, you know this. I'm competitive. If you really push me on it and you say, Trent, what's the most important thing to you? Just win. Win what? I don't care, right? If I'm driving down the road and I'm going 60 and the guy beside me is passing me going 65, in my mind I'm like, it's on. Like Donkey Kong. I will beat him. So now we're both going 90. We're going to get pulled over and go to prison. Who cares? Because I need to win at the end of the day. Like, I want to win in whatever. If I'm eating at our house, and I notice Tayden's kind of eating his chicken a little fast, right? It's like, it's on. I constantly competitive. I want to beat you. I don't care about you. I just want to be. You're there so I can hopefully beat you in life. When you beat me, it destroys me. But here's what the exercise did, and it kind of threw me off for a little bit. As I really thought about my wife, specifically my kids, at my own funeral talking, I didn't care about winning. I hope at the end of my life that they're not sitting there saying, well, he was a winner, or at least he tried to be a winner. That wasn't it. I actually thought about kind of deeper things. I was like, I'd really like for my wife and my kids to say, you guys knew him, he was a knucklehead, borderline moron at times, but he was honest. Like he never tried to get on stage or in front of people and claim he was something that he wasn't. He didn't fake. My kids didn't ever have to get in the car and be like, that's cool that you said that because you're supposed to say that, but we know deep down the real life with us, you're a complete nut job. It's like he was honest. He was honest about who he was to people. That meant a lot to me, my character. And then more than anything, I wanted them all 3 to be like, when you were around him, when I was around my dad or my husband, man, some of the best times of my life. So then I started thinking, well, if that's what matters to me, it wasn't winning 5 state championships. It wasn't making sure I had, my kids like, man, we always had the newest shoes. I don't care about any of that. And here's what's challenging. It's like, but I get caught up in living in that stuff. But that's not what I want at the end of my life. I want you to hear this. In the end, you will have relational regrets, but you won't have possessional regrets. In my line of work, and many of you have probably never experienced this, but in my line of work, I can give you multiple times I've been in a hospital, and it's always the same. It's different, but it's always the same. And there's a grandparent or someone who's about to pass, and you've got all the family in there, and they are obviously heartbroken. They know it's coming, and it's dreadful, and it's horrible. And many times I've been in there with them, and I watch. I've literally watched men and women over. They take their last breath. And you watch the family, and the families react different ways. It's different, but the same. But here's the thing I've never, ever seen. I've never seen that grandpa at 92 say, get his kids. Come here. Listen. and they can barely talk and they're on oxygen and all that, and they say this, I wish we had an 80-inch flat screen instead of a 60. I'm sorry, boys. They never say it. You know what they say? I'm sorry. Sorry for the things I've done wrong. But I want you to know, I love you. You mean the world to me. So as you hear that stuff, you start thinking, wait a minute, what in my life really, truly matters? No, I'm sorry, I took a long time to get to the Bible. But today, as we look in the book of Acts chapter 16, I want you to kind of see a group that found the secret. Then I want to verify that with something Jesus said, and I'll get you out of here, I promise. I'll go fast. But here's what I want you to understand, okay? In the end, you will not have possessional regrets. You will have relational regrets. God talks about that. God is a relational God. But here's what it says in Acts 16. 2 characters. Paul, who wrote pretty much all of the New Testament, a ton of it, a whole lot of it, like probably 80%, and Silas. They're on a missionary journey. They are sharing the good news of Jesus with people. So in our minds, they're trying to do a good thing. Here's what it said in verse 22. It said, the crowd joined in the attack against Paul and Silas, and the magistrates, the leaders, ordered them to be stripped and beaten with rods. Now, can anyone here say that would make you happy? Honestly, okay? Hey, did you guys hear about Mark? Yeah, last week, man, people pulled him over and they stripped him naked. We all were looking at him. One, was naked. That was awkward. And 2, they took rods and beat him half to death. Okay, that's not a good day. Look what it says. After they've been severely flogged, what's flogged? I don't know, but it sounds not fun, right? I don't think I want to be flogged. After he was severely flogged, they were thrown into prison, and the jailer was commanded to guard them carefully. Now, they are awaiting a possible sentence to death. So can we just all agree, if nothing else, whether you believe in the Bible or not, or you even think the story is true, can we all agree this is not a happy time, right? Now, I want you to see verse 25. It says, about midnight, Paul and Silas were praying. I get that part. If you beat me severely and I'm in jail, fastened to a guard, and they're telling me, we're waiting to see when we're going to kill you, when we're going to put you to death, I'm probably going to pray. I'm probably going to be begging God to get me out of this and rain fire down on all these people. But here's the second part that's tricky. At midnight, they were praying and singing hymns to God, and the other prisoners were listening to them. So they didn't only pray, they actually were saying, we are happy. We're singing praises to God. We're happy he's our God. In the worst possible time, you see people who are still happy with joy. What is that? Well, I believe this wholeheartedly. I believe these two knew the secret that I hopefully want to share with you today. Your ultimate happiness, hear this. If you've been zoning out, that's fine. Zone in for just a quick second. Your ultimate happiness will always depend on your peace. I believe that wholeheartedly. Happy people are people who, one, are always at peace with themselves. Now, you think about that. You think about the people you know, and you maybe don't even get them, and maybe you don't like this about them, but you've watched, and some of you in here, and some of my dear friends in this church, I know you personally, and you do it all the time. You get in the spiral. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't have said that. Oh, they're going to think I'm so stupid. Why did I say that? Oh, I'm embarrassed. Oh, what do they think about me? What do they think about me? What do they think about? Who cares? Who cares? Who cares? But we all know those people, and if we're honest, we're like, you know, you sounded really dumb when you said that. I know. What, are you worried? Not really. And in a way, we're like, oh my gosh, it seems like they're so simple, but we want those people who are comfortable in their own skin. They're like, I know I messed up. I'm sorry about that. But I'm not going to sit and beat myself up every single second and worry about what people think about me every second of my life. The happiest people are at peace with themselves. Secondly, they're at peace with others. You see, they've realized something. Paul and Silas knew this. You see, I can't be at odds with you and claim I'm okay with God because you're one of God's children as well. See, I want you to picture this morning, one of you woke up to me and you're like, hey, Trent, I just want you to know, in all seriousness, I think the world of you. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Please tell me that if you get the chance, right? But you say, I want you to know, I hate your wife. She is and I mean she's a bad woman. But even more than your wife, I hate your 2 kids. When I look at them, I want to punch them in the face. But we're good, right? All right, have a good day. It's like, we're not good at all. And that's what God's saying. You cannot say, I'm okay with God, but there's like 5 people I completely hate. God's like, it doesn't work that way, right? You have to be at peace with yourself. But you also have to be at peace with others. Think about Paul and Silas. It's like, they're over there singing, and could you imagine being in prison? You're like, dude, you're a weirdo. Why don't you want to get back at them? Why don't you maybe pray that God will strike them all down with lightning? We're good. Why? I know people in this church who've shared personal stories with me. Abuse, neglect, stories where you're just like, oh, I hate that person and I don't even know them. And I'm like, yeah, so obviously you want the worst for them. Let it go. What? And I'm almost like, you shouldn't don't let it go. They don't deserve it. And they're like, you're right, they don't. They don't deserve ruining the rest. They ruined the first 10 years of my life. I'm not going to let them ruin the next 30. And as much as we hate, we're like, gosh, I like that. Peace. I'm at peace with those who've wronged me. I'm at peace with those who don't like me. I can still even love them because I'm at peace with myself and others. And then ultimately, I'm at peace with God. I'm at peace with God. So a religious guy, an expert of the law, so he would be like a super churchy guy. They would hire these people. They're almost like lawyers in Jesus' day. And they would come to Jesus and they were trying to trick Jesus, okay? So basically what they do, they'd be like, okay, here's kind of how the law works and we struggle with making this happen. So when you meet Jesus, act like you're just trying to figure stuff out, but we really want you to trick him and we want to get him caught up in something. That way we can make him wrong and we can prove he's not the Son of God. So Jesus constantly had very professional, like religious spies planted in his group trying to constantly get him thrown off and to say something to prove he wasn't the Son of God. So that probably wasn't fun, right? But here's what happened in Matthew 22. It says, one of them, an expert in the law, tested him, talking about Jesus, with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Okay, Jesus, I know you tell these parables and you're a good teacher and people love hearing you talk, but there's like over 600 laws. And that's confusing. And I'm not going to lie, me and my boys are confused. Could you maybe just give us the Cliff Notes? Could you just explain this whole thing to me? Give us the two main rules we need to keep in life, and God will always be happy with us. He said, what is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord. I can see this guy being like, stop. You heard me wrong. I didn't say one of the things we should do. I'm asking you, what is the top command? You see, commands always need to start with, don't you ever. Never ever. Thou shalt notteth, evereth, doeth. Whatever. It's like, that's what it has to be, right? Or it needs to be always make sure you read your Bible every second, every day. That's what a command is. Like, Jesus, you misheard me. And Jesus is like, no, I didn't. I'm actually answering your question. Here it is. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is just like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Matter of fact, Jesus says all the law, prophets, everything you need to do hangs on these two. Now, you think that's pretty profound because Jesus addresses, he says you need to love God, a.k.a. you need to have peace with God. You need to love your neighbor, a.k.a. have peace with those around you as you love yourself. So you need to love yourself. You need to love all three of those. And if you don't have peace in one of those areas, you'll never feel content. You'll never be happy. You know why Paul and Silas are sitting in there thinking, we might die tomorrow. A guy beside him like, do you realize I've heard them murmuring? They're going to cut off your heads tomorrow morning. We know. Well, aren't you freaking out? We're not. What? How? How can you do that? Because Paul would say, because I have peace that God is in control, good or bad. This past Thursday, my wife and I we took our annual pilgrimage to Columbus, to the James. Cancer, which is a word all of us hate to hear, right? Annual checkup. And even as we were driving there, I really honestly wasn't thinking about it too much. But when I finally dropped her off because of COVID, I couldn't go in. So I'm sitting in the car, and it kind of registers every year about that time. I'm like, oh gosh, you start flipping out, and your mind starts spiraling. And you're like, what if? What if I get a text saying, you got to come in? Or what if she comes out and she's just devastated? So you kind of freak out a little bit, right? And in that moment, I just thought, I trust you. God, whether you do what I want you to do or not, and you know what I want you to do, and please do what I want you to do. But even if you don't, I trust you. I have peace with that. I don't love it, but I've got peace that you are in control. You see, the gospel isn't this rule that just gets you into heaven and you get to do whatever you want. The gospel is bigger than that. It says, here's how you live with peace every day. Here's how you live happy. When the rest of the world is miserable, you don't have to be because you have peace with God, with others, and yourself. Now, my wife's filming here, and I just want to share one thing about her. My kids are here, and they will verify this. My wife is all about relationships. She really is. Like, if you push her on, she doesn't care about money. She doesn't get caught up in any. Every now and then she'll be like, I wish we had this for our house, but she really doesn't care. She's pretty impressive. 20 years. But I was thinking, to give my wife some credit today, I've known her for 20, really 30 plus years total that I've known her. And I would say she's one of the happiest people I know. Why? Because honestly, I think she's truly at peace with who she is. She's at peace with others. You're like, you should be mad. They talked about you. It's okay. And I think she ultimately knows God is in control. I watched her as she watched her father, and we all thought he may not even survive. He may die. He was so sick in the hospital. It was a month. It was grueling. And I would watch her family freaking out, and she would come in. And I was like, how's she do this? Peace with God. I'm going to trust him. I'm going to trust him no matter what happens. But I want to give one thing my wife has done since my kids have been very little. They're 17 and 16. If you're a parent or a young parent, if I could give you any advice, do it your own way. But this is one of the genius things she did. Blew my mind since they were little. My wife has a simple rule with our kids. She will never tell them no. Now, some of you are like, so you're telling me when I'm in the grocery store and little Bobby's screaming that he's got to have Skittles? I just say, have 10, right? No. She told him no a ton. But she had an internal rule since they've been babies that if our kids ever said, hey, Mom, can we go play? Hey, Mom, can we jump on the trampoline? Hey, Mom, can you take us? Hey, Mom, can you help me with my math? Hey, Mom, you want to play a board game? She said, my rule is to never say no when my kids ask me to do something. Because internally she knows one day they're not going to be with us. Now, I would love to stand up here and tell you I did the same, but I don't. I say no all the time. Hey, Dad, you think you could? No. Can't you tell I'm busy? I'm trying to watch Netflix. I haven't been able to watch TV all day. This is great. Or I'm even better. Sometimes my kids are like asking me questions, and I don't even answer because I'm like, oh, my gosh, the Browns traded who? Right? But I know this, at my funeral, I won't be like, boy, my dad loved the Browns. There's times we'd try to spend time with him, and he'd just be on his phone. I love that old sucker. No, you'd be like, that's horrible, right? And she did. She's lived. And I can honestly say, I can't think of a time, just personally, she probably has, that she said no to our kids. They want to do something? Yes, because she knows there's going to come a day when maybe they don't want to spend time with us. So let's maximize the time they do. And then hopefully once they get older and get married, then they'll want to come back and spend time with us when they don't have to. That's our ultimate goal as parents, right? But here's what I want you to hear today. You've got to realize at the end of the day, what's most important to you. And Jesus said, I'll sum it up. Peace with God. Peace with others. Peace within yourself, that you live within who you ultimately really think God wants you to be. And I'll say this as we kind of close. I want you to hear this, okay? I believe this wholeheartedly. And I know this is churchy. I'm sorry. Like, it's your job. But I mean this. I truly believe happiness, joy, peace with God paves the way to have peace with others and equips me to have peace with myself. That's what Jesus was telling this guy. Even though he was trying to trick him, he said, I'm going to give you one better. You want kind of the summary of this life? You need to have peace with God first, and that's going to lead the way to having peace with your neighbor, even though you maybe don't love them. And it's going to lead you to have peace with yourself where you can say, I'm okay. I'm okay when I screw up, because that's going to happen. I apologize to the person, I move on. But I don't beat myself up every single day. And here's where I think if you're a young person or you're watching online and you don't believe in any of this and you think it's nonsense and you can't believe people still show up to church in 2021 because surely science has proven much better at this point, here's what I would say to the camera. I'd say to you guys, I became a Christian at 13 in a little tiny country Baptist church right beside my house. Walked over there for about a year. I became a Christian. And if I'm honest with you guys, my biggest struggle with, in that church, the system kind of worked where they'd have an altar call and people would come up, which is fine. Not really something Jesus ever said, but still people would come up and then they'd pray and someone would pray with them and you make a commitment to follow Jesus. Okay, completely good. Well, I did that. But let me tell you my biggest hang up as a 12, 13-year-old Trent. Just being honest with you guys. I remember struggling and like, man, I think I should do this. I know I'm supposed to live for God. But if I'm honest with you guys, I was like, but I also want to be happy. So for a 13-year-old, and many of you probably think this, it's like I can either pick God or I can pick happy. okay, I'll pick God, I'll serve him dutifully and be miserable, but I guess I'm doing what God wants me to do. Or it's like, but I also would like to kind of live life and enjoy life. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that Jesus is like, that's the biggest problem. You never, ever live in joy and happiness until you first have peace with the Father, peace with others, peace within yourself. He called that the greatest commandment. So today we're going to pray. If you would just join me for just a second. I'm going to ask you a question this morning, just point blank. We'll sing a song, we'll get out of here. Here it is. How many of you would be honest enough? Nobody's looking around. No one look up. But how many of you would just be honest enough, and all I want to do is pray for you today? Online, you message us. You can put in the comments, put a thumbs up, hands up if you need, whatever. But right now, you just say, Trent, if I'm honest, I don't have peace in one of those areas. Maybe it's with God. Maybe it's with someone who's wronged you. Maybe it's actually peace with yourself. You're just constantly spinning your wheels. You're in turmoil. Always worried about what the next person thinks or what they're saying about you. If that's you, I'd love you to be honest enough to raise your hand. I just want to pray for you today. I want to pray. Thank you. Thank you. A lot of hands. Thank you so much. Thank you. Father, I do pray. I know it's miserable not to have peace. It literally is the greatest thing that can rob all of us from our happiness. And I pray that this group would just hear this so clearly, what I needed to hear when I was 12 and 13, that if I resist God, I am ultimately resisting true happiness in my life. So, Father, I pray for somebody here who ultimately needs to start with having peace, and maybe you're watching online, maybe you're in this room right now, but you ultimately need to take that step of faith to find true peace with God through forgiveness in what Jesus did for us. How do you do that? It's real simple. Just join me in a simple prayer. Today's the day. You can kind of feel something in your life. You feel your heart starting to beat a little faster, like God's just kind of speaking to you right now, and here's your moment. Just join me in a simple prayer and say something like this. God, I know I've sinned. I know I've done wrong. I don't have peace. But I'm asking you this morning to save me. Forgive me of all my junk, all my shame, all my sin. I know sin separates, but you bring me back. So if that's you, here's your prayer. Jesus, I'm asking you to save me. Forgive me. Thank you for saving me and forgiving me of my sins. Now, with nobody looking around, I'm not going to make you stand up. You don't have to come forward, but we want to celebrate as a church, as a body of believers, when someone takes that huge initial first step. So if that's you, do something really bold for me before we sing. Super fast. If you would just lift your hand, just hold it for just a second so we acknowledge you. You can put it right back down. We just want to celebrate. If that's you, Trent, for the first time, awesome. Thank you. I see that. Anybody else just like to lift their hand and say, today's the day I asked Jesus Christ to save me for the first time ever. Awesome. Jesus, we're so thankful for what you do. Thankful for who you are. Father, we love you. We thank you for all that you do. Just as we walk out these doors, I pray we would have peace. Peace with you, peace with others, peace with ourselves. Amen.